Hello, and if you've been keeping up, welcome back. This episode contains language, references to sexual assault, and violence, which, depending on your personal beliefs and parenting style, may not be suitable for children under the age of 12. If this is all too triggering, please skip this episode and move on to the next story. There are plenty more, and plenty more to come. Now, keeping that in mind, as you ready your ears to participate in the story, I once again thank you for being here. Please stay tuned after for a deep dive into the story with me. Without further delay, this is Short Stories with Stefan, Episode 8, Isabella. She is lightning in a bottle, walking through me like air, and I loathe her absence. Like absinthe, I drink up her eyes and become drunk with desire. When we were children, our bodies were not complicated, and we needed no maps to explore them. Before shame could put his grungy fingers all over our spirits, we were free to caress one another from head to toe. To be children in love meant the leaves turned gold as we turned red. It meant the snow was an accessory to our winter wonderland. She was my first kiss, my first touch, my first love. We've had many lovers since, both of us. And since the days of innocent petting, a canyon has formed between us. We did not build the canyon. That responsibility falls on our families' heads. Yet, without our consent, we were thrust on opposite ends of this Grand Canyon of familial turmoil. I haven't seen Isabella in person for 5 years, and social media is limited in its communicative capacity for understanding how someone is really doing. She is one of the greatest mysteries in my life. I've never understood why her gravitational pull could still tug at me from worlds away. Today, I'm supposed to be sad that Father Gabriel has died, but I'm not. In fact, I'm grateful. Not that he is dead, of course, but I have gratitude for the situation. It is the situation that will allow me to see Isabella face to face again. In Father Gabriel's death, there sprouted the hope that maybe she will share a stare with me, if only for a moment. That would be enough. It is the expectation building in me once again, the overwhelming stacking of ideas in my mind, forming a Tower of Babel to nowhere. When my family arrives at the church, the building looks down on us like it always does. The towers are always pointing to a morality we'll never reach, the doors looking more threatening than welcoming, and the people moving in like ants returning to a nest. People kiss each other with a gentle peck on the cheek after an equally quick embrace. There are countless echoes of how sad the day is, how missed Father Gabriel will be, and that he's in a better place. I too get caught up in the ritualistic mourning that this church has perfected. The hellos, the how are yous, and the effort to put on a sad face. When we walk into the church and take our seats, this entire facade is thawed away in an instant. In the front row, sitting next to the towering man which I can only assume is Mr. Montenegro, is Isabella. I am now trying with all my might to keep my face gray, and the mask of this false authenticity is itchy. My heart begins to beat at a rapid pace, and as if that was not enough, she turns around. Those eyes strike me like a meteor shower. She curves her lip to the upper left, giving me a half smile and a slight wave. I raise my hand and wave back, hoping that I'm not smiling as hard as my mind is. Then she gets up and walks out to the courtyard. Before going behind a wall, she turns around, those eyes piercing me once again. And then with a nod of her head, motions I follow her. I feel my legs stand up like the doctor hit both knee-jerk reactions with the mallet at the same time. I take casual steps towards the courtyard, fearing that if I am not vigilant about remaining calm, then the beat of my heart will dictate the beat of my steps, and I'll end up sprinting. When I get to the courtyard, I don't see Isabella. I look around, and then as if she was a sunrise crawling over a horizon, she appears from behind another pillar. I'm glad you're here, Vincent. Her voice matches everything else about her. I was hoping you'd come too, I say. She walks up close to me and then pulls me in for a hug. I am certain she can feel my heart beating into her chest. You haven't written me in weeks, I say. I had a few things come up, and I wanted to talk to you about them in person. When I said I hadn't seen her in person in 5 years, that was true, but I omitted the truth that we have never stopped writing letters to one another. I must have hundreds of letters from her. Her letters are precious to me. Writing letters in secret has been an ignition to a flame I didn't think was possible. Like a California wildfire, my heart rises up against all who oppose it. Therefore, Putting pen to paper is my way of setting fire to the familial boundaries neither of us asked to be put in place. I received her letters even while I was with another. I welcomed them like gems to an invisible crown, and her, my invisible queen. I would tear down the highest wall to hold her. She is my Helen of Troy. She makes me irrational. She lets go of the hug, but her hand travels from my shoulder to my elbow and then rests on my own. Her eyes, like endless oceans, swim around my face, and I try not to fall in as she examines my features. You're the most beautiful man I've ever known, Vincent. I'm blushing. I can feel my face become hot with lust and embarrassment. I squeeze her hand as we walk to a spot to sit, and I say, "What could you not tell me in a letter?" She kisses me with full, gentle lips on my cheek. "Do you love me?" What a stupid question from a genius person, I think to myself. You must not have gotten a single letter I've written. I know, it's just, isn't that your greatest fear too? What is? To never be loved, she says. I stopped having that fear when I met you, I reply. You mean when we were kids? She matches my blush with a flush face of her own. What is it that you couldn't write to me? I've done something terrible and magnificent. Her cheekbones clench. What is it? I ask, and I watch as the tiny details of her face give away her search for the right words. I killed a man. The words fall in my ears like a rock tossed into a well. When they finally splash into my deep consciousness, I'm brought back to the present moment. I look at my love, my Isabella, and I am riddled with disbelief. Is this a joke? I finally say. She shakes her head, and her eyes, those pools, tell me she is not joking in the slightest. Who? I ask, turning my body towards her. Her gaze paints a trail inside the church, and I ask, with hesitation and quick inference, Father Gabriel? She nods, and I am filled to the brim with turmoil. Father Gabriel had been in both of our lives, our entire lives, and had always been kind. Help me understand why. I don't let go of her hand. Even if my mind wishes to doubt her intentions, my heart refuses to. He was a monster, she says, and I can see the pools that are those deep brown eyes begin to leak like the slow diversion from river into stream. The tears follow her features, those master painter features, down to the tip of her rounded chin. She then proceeds to go into vivid detail about the horrors she has endured over the years at the hands of Father Gabriel and his associates. Not all priests work the mob. A lot of them fight back. They don't live long, but they fight anyway. I knew Father Gabriel to be one of these fighters. But it seems Father Gabriel, like a lot of people who seek justice, became tired. In his fatigue, he turned over his soul to the devils of his desires. And the thing with devils is that they're always hungry, but rarely full or satisfied. She finishes her account, and I now understand why she's never told me of the trauma. I now know why I'm finding out about this atrocity post-mortem. If she had told me this, then I would have done it myself. How did you get away with killing him, though? I attempt to sound incredulous, but I'm trying to mask my feverish anger which now flows through me as natural as blood. I shot him. Nobody heard the gun go off? No, we were alone, she says with quivering lips. How did you get away with it? She explains how she took his key and raided the church safe in his office. There was over $300,000 in there, and she took the money and hid it. When the police found the body the next day, it looked like a robbery gone wrong. She said she couldn't be suspected because she had a solid alibi. Her hands were shaking now, and oh, how I wish I could revive him only to extinguish his life flame once again. I was with my father. Well, lucky your father could vouch for you. He is furious with me, she says. Furious? How could he be furious? Wouldn't he be proud? She turns to me, and I feel my heart shrink and grow with despair and love. Her eyes are wailing while she shivers next to me. I am unsure whether she is shaking with rage or sadness or both. I am trembling with both. She starts sobbing into my chest as she explains how her father was letting him do what he was doing because Father Gabriel was paying her dad a percentage of the church's income. Her dad used the church as a front for his business, and Father Gabriel only agreed to hold up his end of the deal as long as he could have her. Her father didn't even wait a day to give him his answer. She was 10 the first time she stopped being a daughter and began being an asset. She explained how when something was happening, she'd pretend to be a wall, the ceiling, the lamp, anything other than what was happening in that moment. Her forehead scrunched as she tried to dam the onslaught of tears now tumbling down her pearl-smooth cheeks. I am shaking with rage. My father is an evil man. I am nothing more than a business wager to him. Leverage. I pull her close. Her tears touch my cheek. They are hot, and I feel her tremble in my arms. How can I help? Is what I finally decided to say. What can you do? Anything, I say with definite truth. She reaches into her overcoat pocket and in what feels like slow motion reveals a petite revolver. It glistens in the courtyard low light. It's like she's holding a small star in her long, elegant hands. She looks up at me and then pushes the gun into my free hand, like a mother, gently handing a newborn to the father. She brings the lips I love close to my ear. Kill him. Her words are surprising and yet inevitable. I feel that I could have taken this direction without her giving it to me. I kiss her, pocket the revolver, and feel her tears wet both our lips. I love you. I love you. I take one more deep dive into her brown pools, drink up her lips with a slow embrace. I stand up and walk back inside. My temples feel like God herself is pressing against them with righteous palms. My heart is no longer beating. I'm living on righteous rage alone, and my hands are shaking in my pockets. When I walk back inside, the church is more full now. I walk up to Mr. Montenegro. He looks up at me, and his eyes seem to understand my own. I see him reach into his jacket. But while he may think he is moving quick, I see him in all his slowness. He is not a person. I'm not taking a person's life. That would be murder. He is a monster. He's Dracula found sleeping, the sea monster on shore, a dark place about to meet the light in my palm. I pull out the revolver, aim it at his chin, and squeeze the trigger. A rush of endorphins bombard my body. The rush of sex is released from my elbow down to my fingertips. I think I now understand why someone says they got fucked up. What happens next doesn't matter. The body's on top of me, tackling me, pressing me into the ground. None of it matters. My mother's scream, the yells of terror, the blood dripping from the edge of the pew from his lifeless body, like thick wine leaking from a stone. None of it matters. The people rushing out, the police rushing in, my body ripping upwards back up onto my feet. None of it matters. While being marched down the aisle like a groom to the slaughter, I see her, my Isabella, eyes still wet with steaming tears. Her lips give me the words, "Thank you." I return with my lips, "I love you." "I love you," she echoes. The adrenaline is wearing off now. My senses are calming down as the external stimulation around me speeds up back to normal. I hope the message is clear. I am hers, and Isabella is mine.
Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Yeah, we ran out of patience. Boil up with the cold hard hatred. I can feel the vibration. Feet in the streets, it's a new sensation. I wanna break faces on the pavement. I wanna make greatness look complacent. Adrenaline awakened, I can taste it. We can make an impact, grab and then take it. Like a disease, bring them to their knees. They'll take for their disease. Just like a weed, spread into the streets. It's time to make them bleed. 'Cause we just want retribution. Let's go light up the darkness. Make true of an empty promise. Flip cards into weak and harmless. Take to the streets and turn them to a mosh pit. 'Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to After the Story with me, Stefan. Isabella is a tough listen for a number of reasons. Not just including the violence, but the reference to violence and the reference to sexual abuse. Now, on the surface, it might seem that I'm taking a cheap shot at the Catholic community because it's a priest and it's a Catholic church in the story, but I assure you it's not. it is an allegory for really all of the abuse cases that continue to keep coming up and that have happened in the past. And I wanted to make sure that it was clear that this priest was never intending to become what he became, that power corrupted this individual and influence and power corrupted him to a point where he became so morally corrupt he was willing to set aside all that he believed to abuse this innocent child. Now, again, Stefan, why are you poking fun, or why are you trying to make it seem like Catholics are evil sexual abusers? I am not. In fact, let me point out to you that this is an allegory for so many different stories. Just this last year, we saw that Hillsong Church founders started stepping down. Brian Houston stepped down. He resigned after it was determined that he had breached the church's code of conduct. And that man, the church is ginormous. If you're familiar with Hillsong or Hillsong United, you know how big it is, right? That's one example. Just last year, a lawsuit in Arizona said that a Utah firm and lawmaker helped Mormons hide abuse. 3 children who were sexually abused by their father are accusing a Utah state legislator and a prominent Salt Lake City law firm of conspiring with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to cover up the abuse, allowing it to go on for years. And not even just touching on the surface of FLDS. Again, those are very different bodies of people, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the FLDS. I do not want to confuse the two. They are very, 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 very different. And the FLDS is one of the more abusive religious bodies that is allowed to exist in the United States today, which is insane. I mean, I'm thinking about Warren Jeffs, who's in prison and still giving revelations to his community. And that man abused so many people and children in the name of his God. It's rather gross. It's rather gross. And I mean, let's not forget about the Southern Baptist Convention leaders accused of sex abuse. A literal list was released of countless individuals who were accused and covered up their sexual abuse. So, like I said at the top of this is not a specific denomination issue. This is a power issue. And when we allow people to be in positions of power without accountability, this is what happens. And when you cover up those transgressions, there's no room for growth. That person can't get better. They can't grow because you just hid them under something else. And now they're the exact same person, just under something else or somewhere else or with another person. This is really dangerous. And the kind of crux of the story is this Romeo-Juliet love romance. When I was writing Isabella, I was actually in a production of Romeo and Juliet, which was a hilarious experience. And I was just thinking about the absurdity of the story, just how ridiculous it was and how it ended in such a flamboyant flailing of youthful bullshit. I read one critic say that Shakespeare wrote that play not as a drama, but as a comedy, as a parody and a satire on young love, because of just how ridiculous the two characters are in love with each other and how young they are. I mean, literally the story opens with Romeo pining over somebody else. What was her name? Rosaline. And not like 5 pages later, he's like, I'm in love with Juliet. So young people will do crazy things for love. And that was kind of the other crux of the story was this guy didn't even hesitate. He murdered someone. I mean, yes, the character who he murdered is, you are told, is abhorrent and morally corrupt. But the fact remains that his love interest just told him to go kill someone. And he did. Like, he didn't even question it. And I think we really underestimate the danger of young love and kind of the passion that flows and bubbles up when you're first kind of introduced to that love. But yeah, this is a story that touches on a lot of different things. Like I said, I'm not taking singular shots at one particular religion. I'm more pointing out the fact that power, especially in religious communities, corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as we are often told. But what we're not told is that that's not the case for everybody. There are people who gain power and do not become corrupt, who gain absolute power and who remain, for the most part, sane. There are very few examples of these individuals, so I unfortunately don't have them for you here, which kind of makes my argument fall flat. But the point is that it's not a golden rule. Not everybody who gets power becomes powerful absolutely and then becomes corrupted by that power. But in this story, we watch somebody who did, and it's very disappointing. And I think we always get disappointed when somebody who we expect to kind of be above a moral certain standard is revealed to be morally corrupt. It's disappointing because part of our hope was in that person. And I think that religion gives a lot of people a lot of hope. And when that religion is revealed to be a catalyst of abuse, it's really hard to reckon with. And I have a lot of compassion for people who are part of these religious communities, these Mormon communities, these Catholic communities, these Presbyterian, these evangelical, whatever, all of these different denominations and communities. They really get a lot of value from their religion and a lot of purpose. And a lot of that value and purpose comes from the institution being the standard for good moral practice. And so when you discover that arbiter of morality is just absolutely corrupt and absent of it, that's really hard to reckon with. And I don't think we give people enough compassion in those situations. I think I myself am definitely guilty of this, of being excited and throwing stones and yes, haha, see, the monster, the behemoth is falling and that's great, boo. And there are a lot of really angry atheists out there that get really excited when something terrible happens. And I think that's really wrong. I think that's not the response we should be taking. I mean, these are hundreds of thousands of people who are impacted by just a few individuals' selfishness. And to celebrate pain is sadistic. And I don't want to be someone, even if I don't believe in the God that these people believe in, I don't want to be somebody who celebrates when they're suffering. I want to be somebody who celebrates when they're growing, when they're connecting. And I get that that's easier said than done, especially on the ground when you're interacting with some of these different religious bodies. It's very difficult to remain open and compassionate. But it's important to remember that these are people, and these are people that you can and should and oftentimes will care about. I know that for me, I have people in my circle who don't believe the way I do, but I would protect them to the ends of the earth. I love them wholeheartedly. So I try to keep them in top of mind when something like this happens. It could happen at any point to any church leader, really anywhere. And these examples are warning signs, red flags to be aware of. And I'm hoping, the hope always is usually that when these terrible things happen, there's kind of a shaking of the tree and all of the bad apples who spoil the bunch get thrown out. And we get to kind of restart and restructure. Unfortunately, I don't think that's often the case. It seems, especially through the history of these religious institutions, that just redistribution of power is taken more seriously than actual healing and growth. But that remains to be seen. There's still potentially lots of time left for people to hold their religious institutions accountable and hold them to a standard that they are holding their followers to. I think that we're fully capable of that as a species, to hold these institutions accountable to the humanity that they are claiming to be advocating for. And that's all of the parsing out I can do from this little story. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope that it was an added value to your day and to your life. And I thank you once again for listening and for joining me on Short Stories with Stefan. And as always, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.